When it comes to Inkscape, there's a lot that you can do to make sure that your design is symmetrical and is all lined up. You can use the guides that I showed in a previous video to line up your design. You can use the alignment menu to align all your text and objects in the way that you want them to be aligned for your design. But what happens when you want everything to be symmetrical? Well, that's when grids come into play. Hello my friends, Rob here from buttonpressgraphics, back with another Inkscape tutorial, and today I'm talking about grids and how you can use them grids to make symmetrical designs. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now when you first start Inkscape, of course you are going to need to go to your file in the top left corner and go down to document properties. Alternatively, you can come up to the top toolbar here and select this little icon. Once you have got the window open, then you need to go to the subsection of grids, which is right here. Now at the moment there are no grids showing on the document, so there will be nothing there. But if there is, for example, one like this, which is just a square grid, and as you can see on the canvas there is a grid of squares, back like you were in school learning your mathematics, and these are all the settings for it. However, we're not working with the square grid today. We are going to be working with this one from the drop down, axonometric grid. Then all we have to do is select new to get a new grid. And as you can see, now we have two grids laid over the top. But of course, we only need one. So from the defined grids here, we're going to go to the rectangular grid and remove. Now it's worth noting for these settings, when you are setting up your grid, if you zoomed in on the canvas, each triangle is separated into different triangles. The space between each of the triangles is signified with these settings here. But for what we need right now, I am just going to leave it on the default settings, and I'm going to just make sure that it's pixels and not millimeters. Once you've done that, you can come out of that. And if we zoom back out, as you can see, we now have a grid of triangles. And this is what we're going to use in order to make our design. Now the first thing you need to do is make sure snapping is turned on. And if you are still having problems with the snapping onto grids, press the little arrow next to the snapping box. Come down to the bottom, and where it says grid and guidelines, make sure they are both checked. So today I'm going to show you how to make a nice little simple shop. That's all it is going to be, but hopefully this is going to give you the skills you need in order to make your own. So now I am going to go to my pen tool. I'm going to make sure this mode is switched on, create regular Bezier paths. And then I am going to decide how big I want my design to be. So I'm going to start here, click and drag, making sure that the line is straight with the grid, and about there will do for me. And then you just create a box following the lines and making sure that everything is lined up. Like so. Now once you have your shape, we are going to use this as the base for our roof. We're going to make a little roof with a little lip coming out onto the side, and then we can use shading or the color choices to signify where the light is hitting from. So today I'm going to use a lot of browns and cream colors, so we're just going to start with that. And just to get rid of the stroke, we're going to come to the bottom, hold shift and press the X, and there we go. We now have a roof of sorts. Now if I wanted the lip of this roof to be 2 blocks higher, I would come out 2 blocks, come across here, and then back to the start. And we can always use the dropper tool on the left hand side, click the same color, and then if we come to our fill and stroke menu, we can simply take that same color and darken it ever so slightly, and of course take the stroke off. Now we're going to repeat this, and we're going to do one going along here. Now instead this time I am going to lighten the shade and take quite a lot of the saturation out, and of course hold shift and press the X to get rid of the stroke as well. Now depending on your perspective, you can see like a roof that's sunk in a little bit to the rim around the edge. Now we're going to create the higher part, but we want to differentiate the two, so we're going to slightly change the colors. I think I will go with a grey, but first we need to create the shape. Now for this I am going to go a lighter grey, like so, and then because we created that last, it is on top, so I'm just going to jump to my select tool, lower to the bottom, and as you can see, if we take the stroke off, now it's given that really nice effect. Also, if you want to disable grids but not permanently, you can come up to view, go to page grid and turn it off. Now we have our rim. We are going to bring down the sides here so we can see both of the sides of the rim of this roof. And there we go. Now as you can see, we have what looks like a roof, and now when we start to build downwards, we will be able to also give the illusion of some detail as well. So now we're going to concentrate on the walls that would be directly beneath, and as I said, this is a little lip that comes out further than the rest of the building, so I'm going to use these corners here as the anchor points for where the vertical lines should be. So back to the pen tool, and then I'm going to bring it quite far down in comparison to the roof. Around there will do. And now we're going to go back to the original colours that we were using, the browns. And now a little trick for when you're working with symmetrical shapes. Not all of the things that you create will be symmetrical, but for the main blocks that you need to use, it is possible just to simply select one of the objects that you have been using, Ctrl-Alt-D, or Command-Alt-D if you're on a Mac. That will duplicate the shape, and then you can come to these little icons up in the top and you can select to flip it horizontally, and then holding Control you can simply drag it along until it clips into place, and there you go. And now you can also use the dropper tool to keep the same kind of color. Now we can start putting in some detail. Now firstly, what I wanted to do is give a couple of windows at the top, but these are only going to be small windows because I want to make sure there is enough room to leave a sign and then the shop window and a door. So to do windows, it is very simple. You just use the same kind of thing that you did here, but on an angle. By this I mean you draw a square or rectangle, however big you want your window to be, and that's about right. So when we inset this window here, as we're looking at it, we are going to see the side here and here. We are not going to see this side and this side. As such, we are simply going to create another couple of shapes within this box in order to give the illusion that it's set into the wall slightly. But for now, we are just going to change the color of this and make it a very light, unsaturated blue to give the impression of glass. And now we create our other two shapes, and we are going to change the colors to match the building. And now with that created, as you can see, it's given a really nice illusion that there is a window set into the building. And just for this shape here, I think I'm going to add a little more saturation to the blues just so it stands out a little bit more. So I'm going to select all three of these shapes. I'm going to group them together by coming up to the top toolbar here, and then I am going to Control Alt and D, or Command Alt and D, and we're going to bring it along and snap it into place. There is enough. I think that looks quite good. And now we're going to come down to the bottom. Now, one good thing to do is also to make sure that you leave out a cutout as the bottom of the door. So whatever you put underneath your design is going to look like a walkway or a path. Alternatively, you can just create two shapes and then union them together and place them over the top, whichever is easiest for you. But I will show you the way that I would normally go about doing it. So again, we are just going to create this in exactly the same way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come out until I'm level. And there we go. Now we have our shape. As you can see, I've purposely gone in on this side and done a little inward part on this side as well. This is so when I change it to a dark grey to signify the path, it now looks like it is inset into the building. So now I am just going to quickly go through doing the details when it comes to the doors and the windows, and I will catch up with you in just a sec. And there you go. As you can see, it's starting to look a lot more like a building now. But now I'm going to show you a nice little trick for those people who are wanting to do signs or text. So say I wanted a sign to go here. So what you could do is you could simply use one of the path effects and you could line it up that way, but I find it a lot easier to do it this way. First, we're going to create the sign that we want to make. So I think I'm just going to go with a very simplistic design. Just like so. And now I'm going to change this to a contrasting color, maybe a dark green or something like that. But actually I don't think a dark green really fits, so I think I'm just going to make it one of these muted oranges, like so. Now for this next step, I'm going to turn the grid off. So once you have your shape and you've turned the grid off, you can select it and then select it again to get the rotation handles. Then make sure you have snapping turned off, and when you try and skew, as you can see, it is changing the way it moves. But we're not looking for it to change it in that way, so I'm going to hold Control and Alt at the same time until it becomes straight, just like so. Now I can add anything that I want to this shape. So I'm going to add some text. I'm simply going to make it my shop. Yep, nobody else's, my shop. And I'm just going to simply give it a thick kind of font. That is perfect. Then we are going to select the text and the shape, and we're going to center it up on its vertical and horizontal axis. Now selecting off it, so I can select the text on its own, and I can increase the size just like that. And what I will do is I am going to add a couple of just little circles, and then come to my select tool, Control Alt D, and I'm simply just going to put these in the corners of the shop sign. And then again, just to make sure things are perfect, you can align the objects up. Now I'm going to select these two, make sure that these two are vertically aligned, and then if I select the bottom two and make sure that they are aligned, and brings it right round to the edge, and now we know that every single shape is perfectly aligned with each other. So now that I've got it all selected, I can come to the group it all together, and then I can click it to get the rotation handles on, hold Shift and Alt again, and drag it down. And now when we zoom out, as you can see, it already looks a lot better. But now say we wanted to make this sign a little bit 3D. Well, we use exactly the same methods that we have been using for this window to simply make the sign 3D. But first, you need to turn your grid back on. So for this, I'm just going to make it one triangle in length, and I'm going to make it exactly the same way that I made the windowsills on these windows. Also, make sure you have snapping turned back on, because I just made the mistake of not turning it back on. And just like that, now your shop sign is completely 3D. Now what about if you want to add some details? Well, most of the details that you can add don't have to be really well detailed. All you have to do is give the illusion of detail. So for example, this garage door at the back, there is no strokes on this entire design, so just by utilizing the strokes you can make some really cool details. For example, now if we use the pen tool and we simply draw lines going across this shape here, getting to the end and then right clicking to signify the end of that certain path, of that particular path, and we're just going to keep going until we get to the bottom. And now with all them created, we are selecting each one and holding shift while we do so, and then we are going to group them together. But remember, these are strokes, these are not paths, so when you're changing the color, make sure you're in the stroke paint tab of the fill and stroke menu. Then simply by lowering the brightness or even increasing it, you can get a nice little accent to your shapes, like so. And now if I was to turn off the grid, it gives a really nice effect of a rolling garage door. This also works for windows. If I turn on the grid again, use one simple line coming down, and then say I change that one to white. If I select off everything, as you can see, it gives a nice little accent, like it's two panes of glass and not just one. Now there is one final thing that I would like to show you. What you're looking for is if you have got a light source coming directly from the left to the right, as is with this picture, then you are going to cast a shadow, a very dark shadow of all the sharp corners. Now this sharp corner would be a straight horizontal line coming from each corner, which this is one of them. So for example, if I create a shape that looks something like this, and then we fill it black, I'm going to turn the stroke off for this one, and then we are going to come to the fill and stroke menu, and where it says blend mode, we are simply going to select it, scroll down until we get to overlay, and as you can see, it's now created somewhat of a more vivid shadow that's being cast. And we can do this with every single edge that we find. So I'm going to fast forward through this bit while I just highlight every single thing that is casting a shadow on this side of the building. And there you go, my friends, how to create symmetrical drawings in Inkscape. I hope you found this information useful, and I would love to see your designs and maybe feature them in a future video. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section down below, and remember, you can find all of my merch over on Redbubble. I will leave the link in the description. Until next time, my friends, I'm going to bid you all a fond farewell, say thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you in the next one.